So hi everyone again. My name is Michelle. I am the assistant coordinator for 2Excel or second year experience. It's good to see all of you. Today we're going to be talking about self-care and what that really looks like in practicing it during quarantine, especially given everything that we're going through right now in our, politically, our climate. There's a lot going on, and I think it's important to acknowledge that and that um, there's a lot going on right now. Given the pandemic, we're also in school, we're also stuck at home, and then what's going on in Minnesota and across the country about the murders of Black lives. So I think it's important to acknowledge that first and foremost. So just thank you for being here. Um, and yeah, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'll go ahead and share my screen with you. Just so you know, this is going to be, we're going to be doing a lot of reflection. So if you want to take some time now to grab a piece of paper and a pen, if you prefer that format, or if you'd like to go ahead and type on your computer or on your phone, you can do that too. So let me know, can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yes, awesome, thank you. So we're going to be talking about practicing self-care, and really this conversation or this presentation is going to rely a lot on our conversation. So if you feel inclined, make sure to share what you're thinking or how you're feeling about what we're talking about. So we'll go ahead and get started. Let's see. So what I'd like for you to do is just first assess where you're at currently with your stress levels. So in this moment right now, rate your stress from 1 to 10. 1 being the most relaxed you've ever been, and 10 to being like crisis level stress, like you're panicking because it's really, really intense stress. So just take some time to write that down. Where are you right now on that scale of 1 to 10? And try to be honest with yourself. So if you're not feeling really stressed, if you're feeling really stressed, make sure to acknowledge that. And then once you have that number, what I want you to do next is reflect on how do you know that you're stressed. So what do you normally do when you're stressed, or what do you not do when you're stressed? And where in your body do you feel it? So usually we get cues that tell us that we're stressed. Either other people tell us, oh, you seem like this, or we know we're stressed because of certain things that we're experiencing, certain feelings, or certain things we're doing. And sometimes we even feel it in our bodies, right? Like we're like this all day, or we're like really tense. So think about, you picked a number on that scale. So think about, how do you know when you're stressed? So maybe right now you're not that stressed. I'm assuming we are though, given that we're like at the end of week 9. Um, but how do you know when you're stressed, and where in your body do you feel your stress? So go ahead and take some time to jot some notes, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. And just go ahead and write in the chat. Let me know when you're ready. Just type ready, and I'll know to move on. Oops. I'll play some thinking music if that helps us. Can everyone hear that? All right, so maybe about one more minute.
Did you know that Spotify makes a playlist every week just for you? Every Monday, you get a fresh playlist of 30 songs based on others that you love. It's called Discover Weekly, and you can play it right now. But remember, the playlist changes every week.
All right. Does this feel like a good place? Did everyone get to write some stuff down? Okay. So let's do some sharing. So for those, let's talk about what some of the stuff that you wrote. So what are some things that you do, or how do you know when you're stressed?
For me, I know I'm stressed because I'll feel it in my chest and it's an overwhelming feeling. So, what I like to do is write down a list of everything that needs to get done.
Mhm.
And then once I have the list down, I'll highlight what I need to get done first. And it's like my goal for the day.
So like you feel like this sensation, maybe even pressure in your chest, I would imagine. And then you're like, okay, I got to organize my time, prioritize the things I have to do. Yeah, nice. What about other folks?
For me, like usually when I'm stressed, I feel it like in my like head because it's just like an overwhelming feeling, and I try like to distract myself from whatever's like stressing me, and I try to like step outside or step away from maybe it might be like homework or assignments or like personal situations to like recollect myself. So yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Stress can be really overwhelming, huh? Yeah, what about other folks?
Well, I know for me, I know I can feel it like in my chest. I also get cues from like the people around me. That's definitely a way that I don't really necessarily recognize it. But when my family tells me, especially in quarantine, that I've been more crankier than usual, or I've been easier to get irritated, like that's when I kind of realize when it's affecting the people around me.
Definitely. Yeah. It's wild to know how much stress really manifests itself like literally inside of our bodies. It creates so much pressure. Um, but yeah, definitely those are all really great examples. Even for me, sometimes I know when I'm really stressed, I do one of two things. I either completely forget to eat, and then I'm wondering why I have like a huge headache and why I'm super irritable. I'm just like, it just takes a little bit. And then, or it's the opposite where I feel sometimes when I'm feeling really overwhelmed or really sad, I like binge eat comfort food, which for me is chips. So I'm like, if you see me eating a lot of chips, that means something might be wrong. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for sharing, y'all. So let's talk about that a little bit more. Let's unpack that. So here, let's talk about what are some things we do when we're stressed. So sometimes we avoid the one thing that's stressing us out by focusing on other things. Sometimes that looks like procrastination, right? Where we really have to turn in this assignment. It's worth a lot. We haven't really gotten started. We don't even know where to start. So we're like, this is a good time to watch a new Netflix series. We're like, this moment right now. We're like, oh, I'm going to go hang out with my friends and then I'll figure this out later, right? Sometimes it's forgetting to eat, or maybe even binge eating on comfort foods. Sometimes it's doing mindless activities like cleaning or running errands. And I do that all the time. I'm like, oh, I have a really big exam. Today is a good day to deep clean my room. It's like completely avoidant, right? Sometimes it's like sleeping a lot or not sleeping enough at all. Like maybe your anxiety or the stress of a big exam or some personal stuff going on like keeps you from actually being able to get good rest. Sometimes it looks like isolating from others. Sometimes the way we feel can feel like what we're experiencing alone, and sometimes we don't, or sometimes we're so irritable that we don't want people to witness that. So we like pull away from others, or we're irritated easily. So I know that happens a lot for all of us. Sometimes our feelings are so overwhelming. We just get like a lot, we just feel a lot when we're stressed out. Or sometimes, and I know this happens for me too, you feel so overwhelmed that you literally can't do any of the things that you said you wanted to do, which is so ironic, right? Where like you have so much stuff to do that you're like, I can't do any of this. Binge watching Netflix or doing other mindless content, like just scrolling through your feed and then 2 hours pass by, or you go down the YouTube rabbit hole for like 3 hours. And sometimes stress can even be feeling really distracted, like you can't really focus on anything. You can't really fully give your attention to one thing. And the reason we talk about this is because stress, there's things that tell us that we're stressed. So sometimes we don't really know, or we know that we're stressed, but there are certain things that we do that really tell us that we're stressed. And like we talked about, sometimes we feel it in our bodies. So some of you shared you feel it in your chest, maybe you get it in your head, you get headaches. For me, it's my shoulders. I feel like I'm like this all day, and then I'm like, I have to be like, oh, relax. And then I'm wondering why I'm so sore, right? Does this make sense? Do you feel like you relate to this a little bit? Yeah, okay. So let's move on a little bit. So now I want you to take a little longer to reflect. So take out that piece of paper again, or write in your phone or laptop, but I want you to write as honestly as you can, because this really is for you. No one else is going to see it. So what is currently causing you some stress? So reflect on a piece of paper and let it be really stream of consciousness. It doesn't have to make sense. It's really just for you, and it include anything. So it can be academics, home life, racial injustices that are happening right now, really overwhelming emotions that you're feeling, right? So just go ahead and write, and I'll keep time for us, but let me know when you're ready in the chat, and I'll play some music for us. All right, about 1 more minute. All right. So start to wrap up some of your ideas, start to wrap up those sentences. I'm sure there's a lot there. Yeah, so I want you to just hold on to that as we move on through this presentation. Just think about the stuff that you wrote. We're going to be using that a little bit later. But my best guess is the stressors in your life aren't just in one place. They're probably not just academic life or not just home life or not just like the socio-political stuff going on. They're probably all of those things, and sometimes they're intermeshed, right? And that's kind of how stress is. It's not, you can't compartmentalize it because they're all related to one another too sometimes. So what I want to do now is I want to talk about how there's a lot of ways to practice self-care. So we need, depending on what's going on with us or what we're feeling is stressing us most, or maybe what we need the most, that's the way we practice self-care. So a lot of the times we think that we need like a spa day, or we need to do like, okay, I need to do a face mask, or I need to do this thing, or go out and do some exercise. And really self-care is very much it's a very much a personal process, and it's really something that you have to tailor for yourself. So, oh, sorry. I'm not going to tell you in this presentation what self-care is and how it's going to work for you, because that is such an individual process and you have to really tailor it for yourself. But what we can do is figure out ways that you can practice it depending on what you need, right? So this is where we're going to do some of that brainstorming. So I like to categorize self-care in like 6 different categories. And for those of you who have done Women of Color Cafe, you've seen this before. But there's different ways that you can categorize self-care depending on what you need. So the emotional, physical, spiritual, mental, practical, and social. So those are all ways that you can, depending on what you need, that's a way you can practice self-care. So let's say you need some emotional self-care. You can do things like watching a movie, writing some affirmations, talking about your feelings. I think that's a really big one. Like just acknowledging what's going on, doing some self-portraits, going to therapy. There's a lot of ways you can work with that. There's also a way to do some physical self-care. So having a dance party, even if it's by yourself, or even like, when you're in the shower and you're like just doing your thing, probably no big moves so you don't slip. Going for a walk, going for a hike, going to the pool, doing those like fit games, doing some roller skating, going bike riding, literally anything that gets your body moving, even things like stretching can be really good for your body, especially when you feel those stress aches wherever they are. Getting the body moving, getting the body flowing will really help. Let's say you're in need of some spiritual self-care, things like doing a gratitude list, going outside, talking about forgiveness, or even forgiving yourself. I think a lot of times we're really hard on ourselves. Writing thank yous, volunteering, whether donating money or time, things like that. If we need some mental self-care, it could be things like drawing or writing stories, finding shapes in clouds, making vision boards, or playing mind strength games. So a lot of mental self-care can be like, sometimes you feel your mind is so all consumed with whatever's going on that you need a mental break from that thing, but you still want to keep your mind active. That's a good way to do that. Or even playing board games, things like that. And this was my favorite, practical self-care, because it's one I forget about a lot. But things are also self-care. So doing things like cleaning up, decluttering, getting rid of things that you don't need, or making a grocery list, assigning chores or having folks help you with chores, learning about money or budgeting your money, making morning or night routines. Those are really helpful. And then the last one is doing some social self-care. And that's when we're really in need of connection with other people. And I know this looks a little different now that we're in quarantine, but there's still a way that you can practice some social self-care, whether it's like meeting people through FaceTime or Zoom, even though I know we're like also over Zoom. But it's different when you're like with family or friends and you can like play games and stuff. Playing board games, planning get-togethers or virtual get-togethers, or like inviting folks over, hosting like a little game night, just finding any ways to connect, even things like texting each other, even though I think especially during this time, having like face-to-face contact is really nice. So whenever you get a chance, I think make an effort to do some like face-to-face one-on-one time with folks you care about. So think about these things. I know there's so many more options. These are just things that I thought of when you're practicing some self-care. But these are the categories that I like to think about. So let's talk about what self-care is not. So there's a lot of ways that you can practice self-care. And like I said, that's something really personal to you. But there's some things that we do that sometimes we like to tell ourselves is self-care, but isn't really self-care. So these things are like avoidant tendencies, like procrastinating. I know for me, like sometimes something is stressing me out so much that I'm like, oh my God, I just need a break from this. But really deep down inside, I know that I'm just like really avoiding doing that thing. And it's going to continue to stress me out. And sometimes like when we do some of that avoidant tendencies or procrastination tendencies, we don't even really enjoy what we wanted to enjoy because we're still thinking about that thing that we have to do or that thing that we have to get off our chest or say, right? So learn to differentiate that and to really honor where you're at. If you really need a break, take a break. But if you're really like thinking like, damn, I'm just really avoiding doing this thing, then maybe be honest with yourself with that. And also thinking about being careful with things that sometimes might cause us harm later on down the road, or like we may regret later. So this can also be similar to procrastinating, in that like maybe I have a really big paper to do, but I'm gonna go out with my friends because I said I would, and then I'm out, and then I'm like, oh, I'm just thinking about this paper, and then I'm like, you come back and you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I really should have just stayed home. And for me, this looks a lot like Netflix. I'm like, I'm gonna reward myself with one episode, and then like 4 episodes later, I'm like, why did I do that? I knew I was gonna do that, and now I ended up regretting it, right? Or even these things could be like even personal things, like meeting up with a friend, knowing that like maybe we're not in a good place in terms of our friendship or our relationship, and then not really saying what we need to say. I know that happens to me a lot, where like I have trouble saying what I need to say to folks in order to feel like we can clear things up, and then afterwards feeling like, damn, that was kind of a waste of time, right? And the biggest one is a lot of times, I think, given that a lot of us come from communities, underserved communities, low income communities, we don't really practice a lot of self-care. At least in my culture, my parents are Mexican immigrants. They always taught us about hustle. Like, you got to work all the time. You got to be on top of it. There's no really room for breaks. And I never really saw my parents take breaks or take self-care days, because they were immigrants and they were undocumented and they had to make it work for their kids. And so self-care wasn't really something that was taught to me. And when I learned about it, I thought that like, oh, it means I have to spend all this time or all this money into taking care of myself. And really, that's not true. So let's just squash that now. Self-care can really be so many things. And really what it is dedicating time to yourself and relieving some of that stress, right? So you're not going to be able to take that, whatever that weight is on your shoulders, you're not going to be able to take all of it off, but maybe you can take parts of it off little by little by practicing some things every day or every week, right? So it doesn't have to be this really big thing where you like get together with all your friends on Zoom and you do face mask parties and like that's the one thing you do all week, right? It can be or maybe like you play video games all day, or like you're gonna have a video game contest with your friends. It could really just be really small things that you do for yourself every day. So I hope this makes sense and it resonates. So I want to talk about maybe some simple things that we can do every day that I think we can all practice and are really are useful. So the first one really is breathing exercises. And I know to me, when I heard this, it sounded kind of like, why would I take time to breathe? I do that anyways. Because, like you don't, it's not something that you really think about. But it is really important, I think, because if you think about it, all of us take pretty shallow breaths. When do you ever really do like big deep breaths where you fill your lungs, fill your tummy, and then like really exhale, like letting it go? We like hardly ever do that, right? And breathing is so important. It brings a lot of oxygen and life to your body. But apart from that, in the ways that you meditate or in the ways that you practice breathing is really meditative. And what meditation really is just focusing in on the present moment. And so when you're focusing a lot of energy on your breath, you really get to tune out everything else. Because science will show that we really don't multitask. Multitasking is not really a thing that we do. We just learn how to switch back and forth between things. So if you dedicate all your time into going inward and just focusing on your breath, you really get to take a pause. And so I've learned to practice this a lot when I feel really overwhelmed. Like literally in the moment, I have to sit down and like take a really big deep breath, feel it fully, and then say, okay, I got this, and then go back into it, right? So I want to practice it right now. I'm going to show y'all a quick little video, But first, I just want you to find a really relaxed position. If you're sitting up, just sit a little taller in your seat. Make sure your back, the small of your back, is like resting on something. Go ahead and roll your shoulders out, really push them back. Roll your neck out if you need to. Go ahead and turn your camera off if it's uncomfortable to be on. That's okay with me. And I'll play the video for you. So what I will remind you is just try your best to keep your attention on your breath and on your body. And then use this visual cue if you need to help you practice that. So I'll go ahead and play it for you all right now. Hopefully this works. So what this is, it's called triangle breathing. And what you'll do is as the triangle opens up, that's when you're going to start inhaling. And try to keep your inhale up until the very top of the figure. And then hold it. And as it collapses, that's when your breath goes down. So we're going to practice this for 1 minute together. So you should be inhaling nice, big, and deep. Hold it. And then this is where you exhale. So try to practice some of that. So that should be your last breath. So if you're ready, go ahead and come back. If you need to take a couple more breaths, feel free to do so. For me, this is always, even doing it all the time, even with the triangle breathing, it teaches me how sometimes it's hard for me to open up, but at the very top, sometimes I'm struggling. I'm like, I can't go anymore. But that just teaches you like how much you have so much strength in your lungs, and taking really big, deep breaths is really important. So hopefully even for me right now, my brain feels a little more calmer. So remember, you can incorporate breathing into everything that you do and try to practice it. So like any other skill, it needs a lot of practice, like meditation. It's not something that just should come to you naturally. It takes a lot of work. So try to practice that when you can. You know that you can always practice this. And then other helpful activities that I really enjoy is stretching. So it really prevents a lot of us right now, especially, we're like a lot of the time we're sitting in our chairs. We're not as active as we used to be, especially when we were on campus, like walking from class to class, walking to the dining hall. We're just like sitting around all the time, or we're stuck at home. We can't really go outside. So a lot of times feelings of being inside and sitting, it just like contributes to even feeling more lethargic, like feeling like you want to do stuff even less, like you just have no energy for that. Stretching can really be helpful with that. So try to do that every now and then, but I really love to do it before I go to sleep, because a lot of times at the end of the day, my brain is still running on things that I have to do, and I have to work really hard to make my brain like shut down. And stretching really, really helps with that. And there's so much stuff on YouTube, even with breathing exercises or stretching, doing like nighttime yoga, bedtime yoga, things like that. But even doing small things like doing this as you sit at your computer in between class really helps. So practice some of that. And then the other really big one I think you can always practice is mindfulness. So it's just a really good way to clear your mind, to take a pause, and to really enjoy being here. And so remember that you can practice mindfulness anytime. So I know this picture looks like you have to be a little yogi and you have to be like super zen to practice mindfulness. but that's really not true. You can really practice mindfulness like before you go to bed, or even if you decide to go on walks, literally just thinking about what you're doing on your walk, how your footsteps feel as you're touching the sidewalk, how the wind feels across your face, or like, oh my God, it's really hot out, I'm really sweating. Or noticing the colors, springtime is here or summertime is here and flowers are blooming, noticing those things. Or even really mundane things, like for me, washing dishes, which I absolutely hate. But as I wash dishes, I'm like, oh my God, look at this plate. I didn't notice a scratch right here. Oh my God, these bubbles are really sudsy today. So you can always practice mindfulness as a way to take a mental break. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay. So I know these are things that we always talk about, but I think it is important to mention them here. But I do want us to brainstorm some things that we want to do for ourselves, right? Because we did talk about what our current stress level is and what's currently stressing us out. So what I'd like to do, oh, just kidding. Let's do one more. I jumped ahead. So I think like Nadia said earlier, making a to-do list is really, really helpful. I think when we keep to-do lists in our head, they can feel really overwhelming. But if you try to break things down, sometimes they can feel more manageable. So write down like absolutely everything you have to do. Even things like, okay, I got to turn in this paper. I got to make sure to help my parents with this thing. I got to help my sibling with their homework later. Even things like, okay, make sure to water the plants. Oh, I have to go pick up this thing later. All of those things, right? Wash my hair, whatever it has to be. Even things like fun things that you want to do, like making time to paint or to go for a walk or to go for a run. Make sure to put those things down. And then, like I think Nadia mentioned this, categorizing that list will help you feel like, okay, this week is going to be really heavy on academics, or I'll have more free time here to do some of the things that I want to do. And then deciding when you want to work on that task. So creating kind of a little timeline for yourself, and then being realistic. So if you know this project is going to take you 3 hours, then really dedicating 3 hours to it instead of just maybe one, right? And then celebrate when you really accomplish that task. I know that sounds kind of like stupid, but you really deserve it, because I feel like, especially now, it takes so much energy to even do really small things. So really celebrate. You're like, yeah, I did that, when you cross it off and say like, I'm going to celebrate by eating this, or by watching one YouTube video, or like going for a walk later, or today I'm done for the day. I did one thing, right? So celebrating that. So I think these are really easy. Let me not say easy. Really simple things that you can incorporate, that are easier to incorporate, I think, into your everyday routine. Especially now with like finals just around the corner and everything that's going on right now. So now what I would like for us to do is, we talked about some really simple strategies that we can do, but thinking back to what you wrote at the beginning, where you said you're on the scale of 1 to 10, where your stress levels are and what was causing you your stress. Think about what type of self-care you need. So do you need some mental self-care, some spiritual, some physical, some social? And how do you want to practice that? So take some time to reflect on that now, and then we'll kind of talk about some ideas that we have and we'll share them out together. So go ahead and take some time to do that, and I'll play some music for us.
Thanks for listening to Spotify. No, really. You could have listened to the radio. You could have
These ads, there's too many of them.
You could have listened to an 8-track tape. You know what an 8-track tape looked like. Do you listen to Spotify? Thanks for that. And you still have hundreds more playlists to enjoy.
Maybe about one more minute. All right. So I'm excited to hear what you all came up with. So what are some ideas you had about what kind of self-care you need and how you really want to practice it? Does anyone feel like sharing?
I really like the idea of stretching before I go to bed every night, because I know for me, I struggle with the same thing, that I lay down and my mind is just kind of everywhere and I'm thinking of what I need to do the next day, or like what I should have gotten done today.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the idea of stretching before bed and also stretching when you wake up.
Nice. Thanks, Nadia.
I think for me, like I get stressed, but to the point where like I know I'm really stressed when I can't eat, because it's like physically like I can't eat. So that's when I really know like I have to like address it, or else it's gonna get worse. But something that's been helping is doing like the mindfulness meditations, where it's like guided, because I feel like if it's not guided for me, I'm just wandering in my thoughts. But the
Right.
guided ones help.
It's easier to get distracted. Yeah, okay. I'm glad. Yeah, I love guided meditations too. Any other folks?
One thing that I did is like I've started to try doing like drawings. So I had to like buy a new stylus and like get an app on my digital iPad so I can like just draw, because it kind of helps to just like do things that I never thought I could do. Like I never thought I could like draw anything and whatnot, but like since I've been also playing games and I've been like being more at home, like I have to do some things. I can't really go outside, so I just like
Right.
sit in my chair and just draw whenever I really feel like it. And also like meditation in my bed before I go to sleep also helps. The guided ones, of course, because I can't do it myself.
Yeah, definitely. Nice. Good. Thanks, Denise. Any other folks?
I also feel like exercise has played a really big role in at least me de-stressing these days. I guess like when you're at UCSD, you don't realize that you're taking like thousands and thousands of steps each day. And when I'm home, I'm taking maybe like 100 steps to like my upstairs or downstairs in my house, and that's it. And it really did play a really significant role in the way I sleep and how fast I went to bed. And so just going outside and making sure that I've been able to get enough steps I don't know if I could ever match the amount of steps I get done at UCSD, but at least trying to do my best to take as many steps as possible can really help me, I guess, stay mindful within the night before I go to bed.
Definitely. That's a great one. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I will say for me, definitely that going outside. I also noticed on my phone, if you have an iPhone, some of the versions, you can actually track how many steps you take. And I was looking at when I was working at UCSD, and I was like, oh my God, I'm taking like way less than that, like maybe 200 steps a day. And I'm like, this is crazy. And I'll go outside, and usually I'm like, sometimes I'm like dragging my feet. I'm like, okay, Michelle, just go outside for a little bit, go walk outside. And then I'm like, I really don't want to. And then by the time I'm like halfway through my mark, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so glad I did this. This is so much fun. But it's like really hard to work up the energy to go there. And sometimes I just miss being outside because, we're like working all day inside, like getting our work done and things like that. So I've been making it a point to, at least at one point in the day, like eat a snack or drink water or like eat my lunch outside on the patio just to get some sun, because that does feel nice. And then I'll notice things that I never noticed before. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know there was a bird nest right there, and like things like that. So that's always really fun for me. And I think given everything that's been happening right now, with like the murders of like George Floyd and everyone else, I think I'm really in need of some emotional self-care. So that's something I'm going to be trying to practice today. Mm-hmm. Well, thanks y'all for sharing. Let's see. So what I'd like for you to do now is think about, so at the beginning we rated your stress. So what I would like for you to do now is rate your stress now at the end of this presentation and see if there's any changes there. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the most relaxed you've ever been, and 10 being like crisis level stress, where are you now? And feel free to share if you feel like yours is significantly different. Hopefully this presentation didn't stress you out more. That would not be what I want. But yeah, did anyone stress? Well, let's see. By a show of thumbs up on your little tools there, how many of you are more stressed than when you first came in? And it's okay if you do, I won't be offended. Okay. How many of you are you're like at the same level of stress? Okay. How many of you are like at least 1 point less stressed than you were at the beginning of the presentation? Okay. Okay, good. Okay, that makes me feel good. So I think that just goes to show that sometimes just talking about what's stressing us out helps us reduce that stress. And even things like planning out maybe how we want to address that stress, even though we might not do it, really helps us in alleviating some of that, right? Because half the time, sometimes things that are stressing us out aren't under our control, but maybe just acknowledging them and trying to figure out a plan for us, that helps us feel better, right? So keep that in mind. And I hope what you brainstorm really will be useful and that you'll be able to put it into practice, especially in these last 2 weeks, because I know they're tough, especially like this, right? So what I really want to remind you is to not be afraid to take time for yourself. You really deserve it, especially this quarter, because I know it's been really rough for a lot of us, especially being at home. If you're at home, you just don't have to manage school life. You have to manage like home life too, moving back, and then everything that's going on politically right now. So please, please, please take some time for yourself to take good care of yourself, because you're the only person that can really do that for yourself, right? So that's more important now than ever. So don't be afraid to take some time for yourself, and to utilize resources at UCSD that you still have access to, like CAPS, or even us, right? Or even each other. So let me know how I can help if you need some more ideas or more brainstorming ideas, or even if you want to talk about what's stressing you out. Know that I'm always here to talk about it with you. And lastly, I just really want to take some time to acknowledge what's going on with our political, social, cultural climate. So there is going to be an emotional emancipation circle by the NAACP. I know it started at 3:30 for our time, but it still might be going on. If you're Black identified and you'd wish to go, I can send you this link for you. But please make sure, if you feel personally affected by this, which really we all should, or probably we all are, please check in with each other and take good care of yourselves and each other, because I know these are hard times for all of us, right? So make sure to take really good care of yourself, okay? And that's all I got for you. So let me know. I'll send this feedback link right now through the chat. But feel free to give me some feedback, or even right now if there's some things that you want to talk about more. I'll also put in the sign-in link in case you didn't get it. But yeah, if you have any questions, do you all have any questions or comments before we close out?
Do you think you can email us the slides so I can like refer to
them? The flyer?
The slides that you did for the self-care, so I can like look over them whenever I need to.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. If you all want, if you send me your emails, or if you all signed in, I can send you the presentation. Does that sound good? Would everyone be interested in getting it? Yeah. Okay, I'll just email it to everyone. Yeah, and then let me link the sign-in sheet. Are there any other things that we should cover before we part ways? We feel good? Okay, so here's a sign-in sheet. And if you signed in, I'll go ahead and make sure to email you the presentation right after we're done. Okay. Well, thank you all for being here. I'm really grateful because I really thought no one was going to show up. So it's good to see your faces, because I mean, this is the most actually, like most face interaction, like one-on-one interaction I get in most days. So I really appreciate you all. Please take good care of yourselves, and sending you all a really big hug. And good luck with finals if I don't see you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you all so much.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care.